Welcome to the 2014 Independence Institute debate series. Tonight's topic, is there a war on women? Please note that I said on women. I do not anticipate that this is going to be a war of the women, no matter how much John Caldera promised you a cat fight or wants to see Jello wrestling up here or some other bald man's dream. He's not here, so I can just talk about John Caldera all night. Let me also say that the last time someone demanded that I remove myself as a moderator from a panel, as has happened over the last few days since the catfight memo went out, was when I was moderating a discussion on construction defects. I certainly hope tonight's discussion is going to be much more interesting. So welcome to all of you who are here now and not watching Rachel Maddow at the View House, and also to those who are watching the live stream on i2i.org. That's correct, right? My apologies in advance for the lack of catfights and definitely the Jello wrestling. Let me introduce our panelists. Laura K. Chapin is a Democratic communications strategist based in Denver, advocating for progressive causes and candidates in the Rocky Mountain West. She previously worked for Governor Bill Ritter, and before escaping to God's country, she spent 15 years in Washington, D.C. And she is running away to Australia after the election. Depending on the outcome, we might hear about that. Susan Greene is the editor of the Colorado Independent, a recovering newspaper journalist. She has reported news for 23 years, mostly for dailies in California, Nevada, and Colorado. She worked for 13 years for the Denver Post as a city hall reporter, national reporter, political reporter, and Metro columnist. Kelly Maher is the executive director of Compass Colorado, which is a nonprofit organization committed to educating Coloradans on critical national and state fiscal and economic issues, while simultaneously advocating for reasonable regulation, free market policies, economic security, and policies that improve the lives of Coloradans, and also good cowboy boots for all. If you can't see her feet, because I think we have our little modesty Jello wrestling. Yeah. Laura Carno is the founder of I Am Created Equal. She's a Colorado citizen who understands that politicians are not king, endowed with some birthright, and yours was even approved, to parcel out our freedoms in tiny doses as they see fit. She knows it's not the job of hired civil servants to tell us what size soda to drink, which light bulbs to buy, or what kind of insurance our family needs. I will be asking a series of questions and give each of them a chance to respond. And if everyone behaves well, follow up on those responses. Because women know how to play better together than most men, even when not Jello wrestling, we're going to let people kind of choose when they want to answer, so we are not going to be following in rote. And then depending on how time goes, we're going to open the discussion up to questions from the audience. At some point, someone will be walking around with cards, or have you already done that? We'll have some cards, so you can write down cards, and that way they can put the cards we don't get to on iti.org. We'll also offer our panelists a chance for a 1-minute closing statement. So let's get to our first question. And no, it is not. Can you believe that hunk John Caldera is still single?
Easily.
I
would like to answer that one. Yes.
Kelly?
I was going to come today and argue that, in fact, there is no war on women, and then I read John's email, which completely undermined every argument that we have moving forward. But although pithy, I think that John it definitely serves a very critical purpose in our narrative.
I'd like to answer that question as well.
Go ahead, Susan.
Just with one word.
Okay.
Yes. I can believe he's still single. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to take on that question? We can get to it later if things are dull. Colorado was the first state to give women the right to vote. It was the first state to legalize abortion. Now, 47 years later, is there really a war on women in this state? Or in this heated election season, is it really just a war for the women's vote? Who would like to go first?
Sure.
Laura Carno.
I'll take that. I don't think that there is a war on women in the way that it's currently defined. The rhetoric that we're seeing on TV and radio and in debates is definitely a war for women's votes. When you look at the things going on globally that are affecting women, where there is really a war on women globally, where women can't vote, girls can't go to school, women are hanged for killing their rapist. Those are the things that are big, serious issues. But I don't think that the right to an abortion is under assault, that the right to have a prescription called birth control is ever going to be a problem here.
I'll take this one.
Okay.
We live in a pro-choice state, but the clinic over on 38th in Stapleton that's run by Planned Parenthood has a 12-foot high security fence and an armed guard. Women are regularly harassed going into the building. Workers there are harassed. I've had people surround my car going into meetings over there. There's one abortion provider left in the state of Missouri, Planned Parenthood in St. Louis. There's one left in South Dakota. There's one left in Mississippi that they're continually trying to shut down and is the constant subject of assault by protesters. There are 8 clinics left in the state of Texas, which is approximately the size of the country of France. Right now in Texas, poor women in South Texas are driving to Mexico and buying RU-486 over the counter. It's a formulation, it's an ulcer drug called Cytotec, and it's used off-label in Latin American countries for that purpose. ERs in South Texas are reporting an uptick in miscarriages that aren't miscarriages at all. So the idea that abortion rights aren't under assault, they've been regulated out of existence in half the states. According to Guttmacher, in 2000, 31% of American women lived in 13 states hostile to abortion. In 2013, 56% of American women lived in 27 states that were hostile to abortion rights. That's doubled. There were more anti-abortion laws passed in 2011 to 2013 than in the entire previous decade. We've effectively regulated Roe v. Wade out of existence in over half the states in this country. So the idea that women's rights and reproductive rights and access to reproductive health care and abortion rights isn't under assault is simply not borne out by actual facts.
Kelly?
You know, first off, I think that we need to talk about what's happening here in Colorado. Colorado has some of the latest term abortions in the entire country, happening right here, happening up in Boulder. You know, Mark Udall wants to talk about abortion all day long, but what he doesn't want to talk about is his own record on abortion. You want to talk about a war on women. In Colorado, you can have an abortion after the age of viability. After the age, which by the way is the age at which a baby can live on its own. That happens here in this state. After the age which you know the gender of your baby. You want to talk about a war on women. Sex selection, abortion is legal in this state. And so, some people like to talk about abortion as it refers to, 2, 3, 4 cells. That's where they're comfortable. But the truth is, Mark Udall has voted on multiple occasions to allow the interstate transportation of minor young women without notification of their parents for abortions. That is a war on women.
One of the doctors that we had testify at the state legislature this year against a bill that would ban abortion is an abortion provider. She provided an abortion to a 14-year-old girl who'd been molested by her mother's boyfriend. Which parent do you notify in that case? The reality is we live in a world where rape and incest victims are often underage. Texas passed a law prohibiting abortion after 20 weeks or forcing women to go through a pretty horrific series of torments in order to get one. There was an extensive story written about it in the Texas Observer by a woman who had a late-term abortion because the doctor determined that if the fetus she was carrying survived to birth, he would have severe neurological damage and probably wouldn't live more than a few days, so they decided to terminate the pregnancy. She spent 3 days going back and forth to the clinic, having to have all kinds of things that were unnecessary done to her for political reasons. Her husband was with her, she was crying, the doctor was crying, nobody wanted to do this, and none of this was any politician's business.
let's give Susan a chance and then we'll keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question was, is there a war on women? And I think it's the wrong question. I actually kind of think it's a stupid question. I think the right question is, why are we arguing about birth control in 2014? I understand that abortion is an issue that people are split about, but birth control really isn't. 98% of women in America have, at some point in their life, used birth control. Women of reproductive age, the statistic is something like 64 or 68%. So basically, Democrats didn't invent the fact that Republicans are on the wrong side of this issue. They're just reinforcing that fact by calling it a war on women.
Anyone else want to go on?
Go
ahead.
Sure.
It's a discussion.
Republicans are not anti-birth control. If you want to combine it with an abortion, with abortive patients, that's a different discussion. The pill, Republicans are not against the pill. It is a product, it is a prescription. I don't look at it any different from the thyroid medication I take. I take the birth control pill, the thyroid medication, they're both important to my health. The fact that the Democrats continue to put birth control pills in this magical medicinal bucket as if it is the one thing that government should be providing for free or providing us guidance on what we should have is just ludicrous.
Why don't conservatives support handing out free birth control? It's estimated that you save $5.68 in public funding for every dollar you spend on free or low-cost family planning. It's estimated that the program we just had here in Colorado that provided free long-acting reversible contraception cut the teen birth and abortion rate by 35 to 40%. It's also been done in a study in St. Louis that said you could cut the abortion rate by 70 to 80% if you provided free or low-cost long-acting reversible contraception to at-risk women. So why don't conservatives support handing out free birth control? It's great public policy.
Can I?
Go ahead.
I think that is a great question, and the answer lies in the word free. Because nothing is free. You are mandating that someone pay for it. Somebody must pay, whether it's tax dollars or whether it's higher insurance premiums. And going back to the first question that Patty asked, which is this a war on women or is this a war on women's votes? A lot of people ran Obamacare. In fact, some people here were paid to promote Obamacare and talk about how if you don't give out free birth control, that's cutting access to birth control. That is factually completely inaccurate because the truth is people have access to birth control, and it's condescending to women of all stripes to say, we have to give this to you. You aren't capable of buying it yourself. The entire Sandra Fluck farce that tried to pass everything that happened with Obamacare was offensive, condescending, and frankly, below the rhetoric that we deserve in this country.
I'm sorry, you think calling her a slut is...
No, but I do think that holding a fake hearing in order for her to talk about how difficult it is for her to go, I absolutely do not condone how some conservative commentators treated her. However, everything leading up to that was designed to pass Obamacare. There was nothing in Obamacare that was marketed to people that could not have been created in bills that were smaller and less expensive and not a complete overhaul of our healthcare system. However, it was sold to people free birth control, insurance until the age of 26. You want to talk about the infantilization of an entire generation of men and women, frankly. And this is being used as this condescending message from Democrats that you are incapable of buying your own birth control. And so the issue isn't access to birth control, it's free birth control.
You want to talk about condescending? Mm-hmm. When the vast majority of people in this country, Democrats and Republicans, women and men, agree that there should be access to birth control. And By the way,
So
the Democrat.
does that mean paid for, or does that mean access to?
You interrupted me. By the way, I just want to say, first of all, it's not the Democrats who brought this into the election or brought up this issue in our times, okay? That's just not true. But if you want to go back to what's condescending is treating people who are saying, we feel beleaguered, we feel threatened, we feel like our choices are threatened, we feel like our bodies are threatened, and essentially responding to that by saying, you're being hysterical. That's condescending.
And I would point out that basically the Affordable Care Act was a Republican bill. I mean, President Obama passed Mitt Romney's bill. So the Affordable Care Act was the compromise. What we have is a regulated market system where you buy insurance. And the actual group that recommended that there be birth control available with no copay was the Institute of Medicine. And the reason they did that is because the cost of unintended pregnancy is approximately $1 billion a year. And they said that both from a policy perspective and an individual perspective, providing birth control at low or no cost benefits both the individual woman and it benefits society as a whole by saving us the cost of unintended pregnancy. This didn't come out of some magical think tank. This was a medical recommendation by the premier medical policy organization in this country.
Okay, Lauren, I think you have one more to go.
Sure, yeah, and the original question was, why are conservatives against free birth control? I'll tell you what I, and probably most conservatives, would be in favor of is a private organization that provided free birth control to at-risk women. And they would have a big fundraiser, and people who were interested in reduction of abortion through greater access to birth control because it's given free. I think that's where you need to go. And then you have people who are voluntarily seeing the problem, being a part of the solution, instead of putting it into the hands of a very large government that really doesn't do much right every time it touches.
Nixon passed Title X. Title X of the Family Planning Act was a Nixon-supported program, and George H.W. Bush did a speech here.
That's not a private organization, though. That's a government organization.
Yeah, and why shouldn't government do it? It's a public benefit.
Because I just said that it would be handled much better privately and involve the community rather than a few dollars or whatever out of your tax bill. It's something that you're participating in. Like, I go to the March of Dimes benefit and give money because I want women to be able to carry their babies to full term and not have problem pregnancy. So it invests me in that issue. And you would have the same thing if you had benefits for people who were concerned about this issue. Privately, government doesn't need to be involved.
So essentially,
Government is involved whether we like it or not. You can pay for it one way or pay for it another.
affordable birth control should be a charity. A charity?
No, I can afford my own birth control, so I don't need to go to a
Affordable
charity.
birth control, which can run up to $132 a month, should be something that people get as women. And when we're talking about war on women, we're largely talking about a war on poor women. So their access to birth control should be something given to them as a gift through charity?
I don't think it costs $140 whatever dollars.
It could. There's a span between $38 and $100.
Okay, so all I'm saying is this is a prescription, similar to many life-saving prescriptions. Should poor people not have access or have access to all of their prescriptions? Why do we put birth control in this magical bucket?
Is there another drug that you can think of that's dispensed to huge swaths of populations in this country through charity?
Just because it's not happening today doesn't mean that's a better way to distribute it. I will honestly admit, and it's not a shock to anybody in this audience who knows me, I think the government does too many things, and it takes too much of our money, and almost all of it could be better done privately.
All right, we're pulling away from birth control, although somehow I suspect it will come back into every question. We've blown through many of the questions already that were here, but some people have argued, well, it's definitely true that in Colorado, where there are more unaffiliated voters than there are registered Democrats, than there are registered Republicans, Obviously, the independent vote is critical, especially in a tight election year like this one. And some people are arguing, and I laugh at it now, that women will vote as a bloc, the unaffiliated women. What role do you see women playing in this election? How are they going to move it in the really 3 tight races we have going on now? Are these unaffiliated women going to make the difference, and where will they go?
I can,
Go ahead.
the typical political thought is that it's unaffiliated women in Jefferson and Arapahoe counties that sway any election. And although thus far, interestingly enough, we've actually seen a lower percentage turnout in unaffiliated women than we have either in 2012 or 2010, and I know because I am studying those numbers on a daily basis. But I think it's really interesting, and although I'm sure Laura Chapin has some big things to say, especially after today, I think that there is something to be learned from the Denver Post endorsement of Cory Gardner, because the question really is, has this war on women narrative jumped the shark? And although I don't necessarily want to go back to the birth control thing right now, Pew shows that young women who are my age really don't believe the scare tactics that Republicans are coming for your birth control. And the fact that too extreme for Colorado has been a narrative, it's been a drumbeat that we've heard consistently every single election, I'll be interested to see, but doubt that it has the same efficacy with this election as it has in the past.
I think
Susan?
Unaffiliated voters, and women included, are unaffiliated because they want answers. They want to know, instead of broad brush policy views, where individual candidates stand on individual issues. And especially in this election, and especially in the Senate race, we have a candidate, Representative Cory Gardner, whose stance on personhood is incredibly ambiguous. And not only has he not answered the question of why he's sponsored a bill in Washington and keeps his name sponsored on that bill, says something in Washington and something else in Colorado, not only has he failed to answer it, he's militantly failed to answer it. I mean, I've never seen, and I'm here as a media person, I'm not here as a political strategist, I'm not running any nonprofit, I'm just here as someone who asks questions, and I have never seen, ever, and I think probably you've noticed this too, a season when, and I'm not just saying it's Cory Gardner who hasn't answered the media's questions, and this is not a panel on the media, but I'd love to have one of those. I've just never seen, if you looked at Eli Stokel's questions to Cory Gardner about personhood, if you looked at the questions put to him by Channel 9, if you looked at the questions put to him by the Denver Post in their debate, that man, I've never seen a more cyborg non-answer than he, I don't even want to say gave, because he didn't give. There was no answer. And so independent women want answers to those questions. And I think how they will come into play in this election is, unless they get some answers in the next, how many days? 6 days? How many days?
We have
week,
7 days
7 days.
and half an hour.
Exactly. Unless they get some answers, I think they might be a little, I think they want answers, and I think not getting answers will affect their votes. Let's put it that way.
Okay, do we have any other answers up here? Laura?
Sure. So the question was about independent women, not one monolithic group. That's what I'm learning, and I try every day to talk to non-political women, because we here are paying so much more attention to politics than people who don't work in politics. So women who are registered independent or unaffiliated, not one monolithic group. Some are very interested in social issues. Some are very concerned about the fact that somebody's been out of a job for a long time, that their healthcare costs have gone up. And it's not that they're not thinking about the social issues, but that it's just so far at the bottom of the table or the bottom of the stack because of all of the economic issues going on. So not one monolithic group, they're all over the board. I think they're going to be the wild card here in this election.
I will say this. I have worked for candidates who were endorsed by Dean Singleton who lost by double digits. So the idea that the Singleton ego endorsement of Cory Gardner, which is transparently what it is, not to mention managed to insult voters with any common sense at all, I suppose I should thank him because there's now 13,000 signatures on a petition asking them to retract the endorsement. So that's a whole lot of voters in an election where every vote counts. So I guess to a degree, perhaps we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparently blatant about, any type of endorsement that made any sense whatsoever.
Words matter in politics, and if you want to talk about the Denver Post endorsement, not even on the merits of it, but just on the rhetoric of it and the language of it, calling Mark Udall's the attention that he has paid to an issue that's important, again, not just to women, but to most voters, obnoxious. The word obnoxious is obnoxious. And that alone, just using that kind of rhetoric, the word obnoxious kind of is like the word hysterical. It just pisses people off. And so I'm not sure in calling Mark Udall obnoxious, the Post really did Cory Gardner any favors.
Well, we are in the House that endorsed Cory Gardner. Anything else
Yeah.
right now on this one?
First off, I knew that you were going to respond to that, the endorsement, and that was awesome. But the thing is, it always seems to go back to personhood, and it always seems to go. This is like the constant drumbeat: personhood, personhood, personhood. Personhood has not ever broken 30% in the state ever. And here's the thing. The people have a right to bring it to a vote of the people. I happen to be against personhood, and frankly, Cory Gardner said he is against personhood as it is written on the ballot right here in the state of Colorado. So to take this scare tactic and continue to drumbeat it would be just as disingenuous as me claiming that every Democrat wants to immediately stop all oil and gas drilling in the entire state of Colorado because some hardliners on one side happen to believe that and want to bring it to the ballot. Unfortunately, we don't have the power to pull personhood off of the ballot right now or create some kind of commission in order to try to come up with some kind of compromise in order to have the political gain of getting it off the ballot. But it's never broken 30%, ever. And it's been on the ballot now 3 times in the state. So there are people who feel very strongly about that, and I support their right to bring it to a vote of the people consistently over and over again. But frankly, Cory Gardner said he is against personhood. And it is interesting to me that when Barack Obama ran for president, he ran so against gay marriage. And everybody is lauding him for the fact that he has evolved on the issue. And yet, we can't allow the fact that Cory Gardner learned more about personhood. He realized that, frankly, he thinks it's bad for women, and he is opposed to it as written. And we can't allow him that.
But why is his name still on the bill in D.C.?
That's a question for Cory. But
That's
he
not
said
an
he's
evolution.
opposed to what is here on the ballot
He's now
in
hit
the
for the
state.
cycle. He's now denied personhood exists to every single media outlet in Denver. He's denied it to Channel 4, he's denied it to Channel 7, he's denied it to Channel 9, he's denied it to the Denver
He said
Post,
he
he's
is a
denied it to Fox
post-
31.
In fact, every single
He's hit
person,
for the cycle when it comes to lying about personhood.
every single person in both parties running for statewide office have said that they are opposed to the personhood that is on the ballot as written this year. And so, including Cory Gardner.
Let's go back to those independent women. I think those independent women would like and deserve some sort of explanation about what's different between what's going on in D.C. and that bill. I don't mean from you. I mean from Representative Gardner, and what's going on with our bill here. I agree with you. People deserve and have the right to put what they want to put on the ballot, and there's no argument that it doesn't do well in Colorado. But that's a really legitimate question, and it goes back to people just wanting answers. And there's a huge slippage between what he's doing 2 time zones away and what he's doing here. And people just want to know, if it's an evolution, does he somehow evolve when he's on the airplane? Like, what is the evolution? I'd like to hear it. What's the evolution?
But, I think that the question that you're posing about Cory Gardner and people wanting answers is just as valid as when Sean Boyd looked at Mark Udall and said, do you believe in any restriction on abortion whatsoever? And he refused to answer the question. Everyone wants to talk about, as I said earlier, abortion as it relates to personhood, as it relates to the 2, 3, 4 cell organisms that are fetuses, that are zygotes. But what they don't want to talk about is late-term abortion that is still legal in this state. The fact that Mark Udall voted on multiple occasions to protect partial birth abortion for any reason. So if the unaffiliated women of Colorado deserve to know about the federal personhood, as you say, versus the state personhood, which Cory has been very clear that he opposes, they also deserve to know if Mark Udall actually believes in any restriction on abortion whatsoever.
Let's go to another question, and it'll come back to this. We know it. Okay. Let's go off what Susan was saying. If you could ask any question of any politician running this election, and get an answer, and we know you might not, what question do you want a politician to answer? So name the politician and give the question, and feel free to guess what the answer might be. Laura.
Oh, I'll go. When you told us, Senator Udall, that we could keep our doctor and keep our plan, we all knew that wasn't true. Did you know at the time you were lying to us? That's what I would ask.
Everybody else can have their question, then if anyone wants to try to
Can
answer
you
on behalf of a candidate.
Can you repeat that question?
All right. You were saying that the problem is that they are not answering questions.
Yeah.
So what is the question you would most want to ask a politician running this election?
One politician.
One, and
Oh.
get answered. And if it goes, what's the question you would most like to get the answer to from a politician? We've got Laura's.
Do you want to go?
I mean, this is such a bad question for me because I don't just ask one question.
Well, no one just gives one answer at that table. Don't worry about it. Keep going.
Right. I mean, honestly, for me, it's actually not. It's not the personhood thing. For me, it's why aren't you answering questions? Why aren't you available to talk about your positions? And it's not just on personhood. Why won't your campaign speak to, and I'm not just talking about my media outlet, I'm talking about all sorts of long-established mainstream media outlets. Why won't your candidate just speak to us? Can't we have a conversation? So that's the question is, can I ask some questions? That's it. And can you answer them?
Kelly or Laura, do you have a question you'd like?
Mine is way off topic. Mine is of Governor Hickenlooper. Yeah, obviously.
He is a candidate.
He is a candidate, and so he's really this gun thing from the sheriffs to the bills themselves to what he said in different groups. Up at Club 20, he said, check the record. I talked to Mayor Bloomberg, but I made the decision 3 weeks before that. So on the Club 20 stage, he either admitted that he decided to vote for the gun bills before they ever had a public hearing, because 3 weeks before that, the bills were being introduced. So before they'd ever gone through the legislative process, or he was being inaccurate about his discussion with Mayor Bloomberg. And quite frankly, I would really like to have a conversation about that. And in response to your question, I want to make sure that we all recognize the fact that Corey has agreed to do televised debates in front of all the, quote, legitimate media outlets, and Mark Udall declined in kind of a rather spectacular fashion that actually required many media outlets to cover that consistently. So I just wanted to make sure that that I disagree with your assertion about Corey's availability, and in fact would throw that back and say that Mark Udall is the one who has declined televised debates.
I will say this, having seen how Mark Udall wiped the floor with Cory Gardner in those debates, I'm kind of thinking maybe Corey should have agreed to more of them, because I was at the one here at the Denver Post where Chuck Plunkett literally looked at Corey and said, your failure to answer a question also tells us a lot about a candidate. I was also watching the one on Channel 9 when confronted with actual facts by the moderator, Cory Gardner once again went into automaton mode, which is basically what he does. And I guess my question would him to be, who are you more loyal to, the women of Colorado or Rand Paul? Is that why you're still on the personhood bill?
Okay, we're going to move on to
No,
another.
what I'm saying
Oh, go ahead.
is Rand Paul says that the personhood bill says that the bill that Corey's on, the Life at Conception Act, is a personhood bill. So, and Corey says that, well, I've learned from the voters in Colorado. So if you've learned from the voters in Colorado, where's your loyalty? Is it to your leadership in Washington, D.C. because you're ambitious? Or is it to the voters of Colorado who feel differently on this?
Okay, Susan.
I have another question too, and this kind of relates back to the war on women thing. Is that is it House District 3, Daniel Kagan, or 5? 3 or 5?
I think it's fine.
Are you asking about
The
Kagan
Candace Bench,
versus,
yeah.
Candace?
That House
3.
District 3. Candace Bench at the beginning, who is really a newcomer to politics, at the beginning of her campaign, put out a flyer that I wrote in the Colorado Independent, had the look and feel of like the box of an EPT pregnancy test, and with all sorts of daisies and stuff. And it was really, it just really said, essentially, the message of it was, I'm a woman, Daniel Kagan is a man, and Daniel Kagan doesn't get it. The men in Washington and the men in Colorado don't get it. There's nothing in that flyer that talked about her position on choice or on abortion. There's also nothing in that flyer that talked about his, although he's been supported by all manner of women's groups. We're not just talking about a war on women here, we're talking about a war on men. I mean, that's just male bashing, and that's happened in lots of other, there's that breaking up TV commercial, with Barack Obama, where that woman's sitting on her couch, and she's like, I was so in love with him in 2008, and he was so handsome and charming, and then I stuck with him in 2012, and now I just want to get rid of everyone who he's friends with because he doesn't get it. There's this rhetoric coming out that these men can't possibly get it. So there's not just a war on women, there's a war on men. And I have 2 boys. I find that kind of offensive, that men can't get it because they're men. So I'd like to ask Candace Bench, what did she mean by that? He doesn't get it, like he can't get it? Is that some sort of chromosomal, genetic thing that because you're a man, you can't get it?
Okay, Kelly, and then we're going to...
I'm sorry,
And if
because-
you've got, we're going to send out the cards, so if you do have questions, we're going to start going to your questions.
Oh, yeah,
But
fun.
go ahead, Kelly.
No, I do want to respond to that breakup ad. It's so funny because, people talk about the breakup ad and they talk about that thing that the college Republicans made with the dresses and that's supposed to be some larger indicator. But if we're talking about a war on men or we're talking about a mentality, I feel like it's very much a one-sided conversation because don't forget that in, was it 2012 actually, maybe it was 2 years ago, that Lena Dunham made the Our First Time ad, where she talked about her first time as if she was talking about her first time having sex, and really it was about her first time voting for Barack Obama. It was so like bizarre and kind of just strange and really kind of very bashing in exactly the same.
Amen, sister.
Same tone.
I totally agree.
And we'll see there. Well, then we found something on which we agree, which is amazing. But I don't believe that any one gender on one side or the other should be reduced to a single view, should be reduced to our, in the case of the Senate race, to our uteri. I just, like, it's too bad, frankly, and I struggle with this personally, about whether or not you have to live in the world. I know Laura and I both live in the Twitter world, where everything is 140 characters, and you want to get to those people, and you have to get that sound bite. However, because people aren't going to read the long format white papers anymore. They just aren't. It's about the soundbite. It's about the 140 characters. And whether that's ushering in like a systemic sociological apocalypse or not is really a hard question that we all have to ask ourselves. But it's also the world that we live in. And so to pretend like it's on one side or the other, I think is disingenuous.
Okay. Do we have any questions coming up? Okay, I'm going to ask this one right now because as long as we're on the gender beat. Why has Colorado, the first state to give women the vote, never had a woman senator, a woman governor? Why has Denver never had a woman mayor? Why do we have this glass ceiling here? Or is there one?
I'll volunteer. I've criticized my own party on that. I don't think either party does a particularly good job of supporting or promoting women. There is a boys' club in both parties. Frankly, I would have liked to have seen B.J. Nickel run in the 4th Congressional District. I don't agree with B.J. on a lot, but I think she is a good public servant, and, I think, I've actually worked with her on some bills, and I found her to be, somebody who genuinely listens and wants to do a good job, and if we're going to have a Republican in that seat, I would like to have seen B.J. run for it. I think both parties do tend to be very insular and have a boys' club that supports the people they know, and I think Democrats don't do any better job at it, and I have publicly criticized them for it, and think that they need to take a look ahead and promote some people who deserve the support.
I would hope that we can all agree on that, that we need more women in office. For sure, I would hope that we can, can't we?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. And I also think, aside from the parties also making a better effort at recruitment, is more women need to step up. Because there is, I get asked often, will you run for office? I always say no. How many other women out there just don't want to go through what it takes to run for office? So women have to be willing to step up, and the parties need to be better at recruiting.
Okay, Kelly, you want to know?
Ditto.
That's two things we agreed on.
Okay, I know.
I know.
We should just
Take
stop
that,
now,
John
but we're
Caldera.
not going to.
Ditto
Here.
everybody.
Yeah.
That, by the way, is tweetable.
Here's a question that is a hypothetical, and I would be interested to know from elected women. How much different would it be at the state legislature if it was all women legislators? I mean, how much more would we get more done? Would we, would things be different? I don't know.
There would be a line at the bathroom.
Well, that's true.
This is this very hard line to walk, because yes, I absolutely agree we need to have more women, but I think most importantly is we need to have the most qualified, best public servant, regardless of what's in their pants, regardless of what color their skin is, regardless of any of those issues. And so I feel like, although I agree, I absolutely 100%, on a blind test, You have two equally qualified people by virtue of the fact that I believe women do bring a unique perspective to the table. I want to promote that and I want to support that, but I don't want to do it to the detriment of the quality of the candidate. I don't want to pick somebody just because they're a woman. Does that make sense?
God, I so love this agreement thing where like this, I know, because I was filling out my ballot last night and I had told a friend who doesn't really follow politics and who's had other stuff going on in her life that, you know, we could do it together, right? We could go through it together, right? And then it came to all those judges that you don't know about, you know, like none of us know about. And her inclination was just to check the women. And I know.
It's really frightening.
It is frightening. And so I just want to reach across here and just say I agree with you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was really disturbing.
Yeah, no, look, I believe in promoting whomever is best. And in a lot of cases, that is a woman.
Okay, I think the agreement is going to stop pretty soon.
Oh, fine.
This is from the audience. Why is it okay to kill babies but not Nathan Dunlap?
Well, there's that.
Can we actually, if we're going to be made to answer that question, can we know who asked it? Can that person please stand up?
Does it matter? Oh, okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
kind of matters. Hey, hi, I just would like to see your face. Yeah.
Okay, now Susan, I think you have to answer it.
Why is it okay to kill babies and not Nathan Dunlap? It's a completely apples and orange question. I'm not really big into killing babies. I think that we can differ on what a baby is and what a person is, and that's, yeah, we do, and we will. And actually, you may make assumptions about what I think about that may be actually completely wrong. I'm very happy to talk about why we shouldn't kill Nathan Dunlap. We shouldn't kill Nathan Dunlap because, this country has a crisis with the death penalty. People don't know how to carry it out. We're giving drugs that are not authorized to people that are causing cruel and unusual punishment and prolonging executions that are just blatantly unconstitutional. So that's one reason not to kill Nathan Dunlap. I'm sorry?
Okay, we only have a few more minutes.
There is something called
Cruel and unusual.
cruel and unusual punishment. It's in the Constitution. You might want to check it out. Yeah.
Okay, does anyone else want in on this one?
I'm just gonna really barely touch on this. I'm Catholic, and my faith really instructs a lot of what I believe. Although personally, I really also have a strong political philosophy that sometimes differs with that. But when John Hickenlooper ran, he ran saying that he believed in death penalty for the most extreme cases. And to those of us who have lived here our entire lives like me, that meant Nathan Dunlap. And so whether I agree or disagree with the death penalty, Hickenlooper then said that his conversation with Archbishop Chapin instructed and changed his heart on that. And then subsequently still has his same position on abortion. And that is definitely a struggle. And in addition to that, I would argue that putting Nathan Dunlap into some kind of bizarre political limbo where Governor Hickenlooper has made his election or defeat his execution is based off of the governor's election or defeat. He's created this political football. I would argue that strange limbo is cruel and unusual
Wait,
punishment.
I'm sorry. Are you saying that you think Hickenlooper thinks it helped him politically to
No, I said that Hickenlooper has created a situation where his election or defeat takes the execution of Nathan Dunlap and makes that the question. He has put this man's life on the ballot with his election by creating a temporary reprieve and not offering clemency. That is in fact legally the case, and I would argue that putting him into limbo is in fact cruel and unusual punishment.
Okay, anybody else want this one? All right, from the audience, I'm tired of talking about reproductive rights. What else do you have? And then we'll answer this one and then we'll go to final
Well, I'll
statement.
say, that's great. I'm tired of talking about it too. Then stop introducing bills and policies that take my rights away. As I said, there were more abortion restrictions passed in 2011 than 2013 than the previous decade. So if you don't want us to talk about it, then stop introducing stupid bills.
Laura?
I'm tired of talking about it too, and women are interested in far more than these issues. I am pro-choice on doctors. I am pro-choice on my health plan. I am pro-choice on my self-defense. I want to be the one to choose how big my magazine is. I live out in the sticks. Sheriff's really far away, husband travels. Why should John Hickenlooper or John Morse or anybody else make that choice for me? I'm pro-choice on tons of things. That's what I've got.
Yes.
I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the constantly politically perpetuated pay gap, because that's one thing that we did not cover, and it's like top of my list because I was all ready for it. So I'm gonna, I think it's so funny to me that, you know, we have Mark Udall is talking about the abortion issue, and he's talking about the birth control issue, and he's talking about the pay gap issue. And the number that we keep hearing thrown about is 23 cents on the dollar. 23 cents on the dollar. Number one, that is completely inaccurate. But number two, the remedies that the left and Senator Udall are putting forward increase litigation. They promote women suing their employers. Also, Mark Udall pays women in his own office 82 cents on the dollar, 84 cents if it is corrected for all of the things that the left refuses to correct for in their 23 cents less per dollar. And so the group of women that actually benefits from the protections provided in things like Lilly Ledbetter and all of the equal pay provisions that they put forward are women who also happen to be trial lawyers. And those are the women who benefit most by those types of remedies. Also, the men who happen to also be trial lawyers are the biggest beneficiaries of those. And so this continued scare campaign that we've seen from the left about a fake statistic on pay gap, I think is one that we really need to address.
And Susan?
Yeah, I am of a generation that benefited or rode on the backs of generations before me who fought for my right to have contraception, for my right to choose what I do with my own body, and who fought for my right to have a job, in a traditionally male environment, a newspaper. And I've spent it's a little weird that I'm on this panel because women's issues, actually, let me back up. Reproductive issues are just not my bag. It's not what I've ever really written about. It's not what I focus on. I focus on social justice issues. I just focus on criminal justice issues. The fact that, you know, and I've been lucky enough in my career to be able to mostly choose what I write about. And so I now find myself in the middle of this campaign season. I can't write about the things I wish I could write about, and there are a lot of things I wish I could write about. I have tips like this and a small staff, and there's so many things I wish I could write about. But you know what? This thing has been thrust in front of us, and you know, I mean, number one, it's personally concerning to be, but number two, it's just dominated the conversation. And so, you know, I think November 5th, I'll probably still be writing about the election, but I really hope on November 6th, we're writing about a lot of other issues, for sure.
I'm going to point out a couple things. You know what causes the pay gap? Having children. There is nothing more economically determinative to a woman's future than when or if she has children. So if we want to really talk about the pay gap, what put women fully into the workforce was the pill. Was the first time women themselves can control their own reproduction and when they had kids. My grandmother considered it a godsend. And so the primary way you affect how much money you make is when you're in the workforce and when you have kids and when you're spending money on them and when you're spending time with them. And like it or not, women do most of that.
So now that birth control is free, does that mean that we're going to like concede on the pay gap issue?
Well, what it says, I mean, well, we'll see. There's a
like we'll give it a little while to work its way out, but I'm just asking.
What we need are employers who understand that women have different needs and different priorities and they need to accommodate them. And two, as far as the trial lawyers are concerned, asking nicely generally doesn't get you a damn thing with an employer. The only language they understand is money. So unless, yes, they are going to have to pay financially for underpaying women, they're not going to do anything about it.
Okay, on that happy note, it's 7 o'clock. Do we have time for, all right, so each of you has a minute to say whatever you want. On any of these topics, remember we already have, what else do you got? If you got something else here, go ahead.
I'll start. As long as, Laura, I think you said you take the pill?
Yes,
Okay,
I love
yeah,
the pill.
so as long as we're getting like,
Big fan.
as long as we're getting kind of personal about stuff. So I'm really enjoying my IUD. It's called a Mirena, and I love it. And I have lots of friends who love it, and they're Democrats and they're Republicans and Jews and Christians and Buddhists. And the thing we love about our IUDs is that we can forget about our contraception. We can just forget about it, and we can focus on a lot of other issues. And so, frankly, we again, and are of a generation, and I understand the people older than I am who really came of age fighting for these things. That's the seminal issue, and I respect that. But for me, in my generation, it's not. I mean, we take it for granted on some level. But I was kind of forgetting about it, you know, until like 2011 or 2013 when this barrage of bills started hitting us, and then we couldn't forget about it anymore. And so I think, you know, I think there's been a war on women for a long time about a lot of issues, and pay is one of them. And, you know, I worked in this building 5 stories up, and I know I was paid less than my male counterpart. So, you know, those are the issues I'd like to be focusing on, not contraception.
Anyone else? Next. Laura?
Sure. You know, women in my mother's generation used to say, I don't need a man telling me what to do. But now a lot of women are okay with the government telling them what to do, from the kind of light bulbs they use to the size soda they can drink, the kind of toilet you can have in your house. And I just have a difficult time reconciling those two generations of women, because I really feel like we've come a long way. And I completely lost my train of thought, but it was super brilliant. I'm pro IUD. I will leave it at that because I lost my train of thought, but I've just found it again. Just, you know, we can edit that out, I'm sure.
Yep.
But
Independence Institute always does that.
of course they do. But what I think we want for our daughters and granddaughters is to be independent. And I have concerns about this dependence narrative about we go to the government for everything. I want more for my daughters and granddaughters. They're business owners. They invent things. They raise families. They are brilliant, independent people. And this dependence narrative concerns me, and I don't want any political parties or government organizations being the ones to be furthering that narrative.
Okay, Kelly, Laura, final words?
Well, I'll go ahead. Part of the reason I look at the attacks on reproductive rights and take them so personally is because I went to college in Texas 25 years ago when we had Ann Richards as governor, when I had Barbara Jordan, when I had Mickey Leland, when I had Sarah Weddington, when I had Liz Carpenter, who is one of my idols. She was LBJ's press secretary. And I look at what has happened in Texas to the women there who were told, oh no, it'll always be fine. And now it's not. And that their rights have been taken away. And so no, when you tell me that what is happening is not happening, this is not a hypothetical exercise. It's happening in other states. It's happening to real women. Literally, women in Texas are driving to Mexico to try and get abortions. That's not, I said, this is not a hypothetical exercise. So if you don't want us talking about that, then don't pass bills that take our rights away.
And Kelly?
First off, I am really heartened by the things that we agreed on, because I was not expecting that, and I think that's my favorite part of this entire hour. So I want to start there. But I also want to make sure that mostly I feel like I want to impart upon you two, because we're the ones that disagree. This isn't for us about reducing access to anything. This is about not forcing people to pay for things. And that to me is a very big difference. Like,
I pay for stuff all the time. I've paid for lots of things I don't like. I paid for Dick Cheney's heart transplant.
Are you willing to pay for my guns?
We're not.
Are you? No, I'm just.
We're not willing to pay for your wars. Some of your
we
wars.
we've paid for your wars. I mean,
okay.
who gives somebody a monopoly morality?
Remember when
why
I finished
why do
my
I
thing
have
by
to pay?
saying I was so
we were
excited
doing
on
so
the
well.
stuff
Okay,
we
let
agreed
Kelly
on?
finish because they're going to pull the plug.
No, here's the thing: it is no different to require somebody who is morally opposed to something to pay for it, regardless of whether it's for a woman or a man, than it is for me to ask other people on the stage to pay for things that they're morally opposed.
Can I get the Exxon subsidies back? I mean,
Laura,
all right.
I'm sorry. The idea that that I
coming.
don't pay for things that I don't like because I'm a liberal isn't true.
Okay.
let's let Kelly finish, because we do need to end this session and then we can go Jell-O wrestle.
Don't give that to John. Don't.
That John is another thing we can all agree on. Keep going, Kelly.
But look, for me, it is not about access. It is about forcing someone to pay for something that they are morally opposed to. And if somebody is morally opposed to abortion, I am not going to force them through government to pay for it, as I don't expect anyone to pay for things that they are morally opposed to for me. Thank you for the stuff that we agreed on, though.
And thank all of you for sitting with us tonight. I'm guessing the discussion may still continue here for a while. So we'll be unplugged, but you're welcome to listen in. And the questions that didn't get asked, because we were covering a lot of ground, much of it reproductive, will be on the website. Thank you.